life is coming full circle for the Communist Party. It spent decades to curb population growth. Now, it is paying childbearing subsidies to get couples to have 3 children. State propaganda exhorts couples to have children for the country. Yes, think of Chairman Mao Zedong and start making babies. Well, that won't work for many couples. But what the hell is wrong with the Chinese Communist Party? I mean, it introduced the one-child policy, got the population to shrink, and now it wants the population to go up. Why? Hi and welcome. You're watching TFI English, the national and socio-political analysis arm of the TFI Media Group. I am your host Isha, and in this video I will tell you how the shrinking Chinese population is the beginning of the end for the CCP. Let's begin. China's population is decreasing rapidly. In April, FT reported that China's population was set to record the first contraction in 5 decades. The crisis could, however, run deeper. The communist nation could see its population getting halved within 45 years. The country's birth rate has fallen to 1.3, which is way below the average of 2, needed to maintain a stable population. China almost certainly inflates its population. Corrupt local governments and officials artificially enlarge population numbers to get more subsidies and incentives from Beijing. China's official numbers show a population of 1.4 billion. So we are talking about the Chinese population going down to 700 million by 2066, and the CCP fears this. The CCP was strong because of its population. It wasn't made to account for its human rights violation because the West was dependent on cheap Chinese labor and cheap goods manufactured in China. But all this is going to change now. The biggest consequence is the loss of its cheap labor. With a smaller population, labor won't be cheap or readily available. And it is not just the shrinking population that matters. China is also getting old very quickly. People are not giving birth, and the old people are not dying early due to improvements in medical facilities. By 2050, 39% of the Chinese population will be above the retirement age. And when labor is not cheap, the trademark cheap production cost in China will become a thing of the past. We are talking about China losing its position as a global manufacturing and export hub. A number of foreign firms came to China because of cheap labor. They will start exiting when they don't get this advantage in China, and this will cause a sharp contraction in the Chinese economy. It will no longer be one of the fastest growing economies of the world. When a regime loses its fundamental source of power, it turns brutal. So CCP is likely to increase human rights abuses in Mongolia, Xinjiang and Tibet as the Chinese population decreases. But we foresee an implosion. Ethnic Mongolians, Tibetan Buddhists and Uyghur Muslims go up in revolt and demand liberation. A weak CCP won't be able to suppress separatism with human rights violations. See, presently, the CCP can kill, loot and torture ethnic minorities because it knows that the West is dependent on China and will not do much about it. But once the CCP is no longer a major economic powerhouse, Tibetans, Uyghurs and Mongolians will find support from others. We're talking about a Chinese collapse much like the USSR disintegration in 1991. And the CCP will get weakened internally too. I mean, right now, Jinping can invoke hatred for the ethnic minorities amongst the Han Chinese population. But once the Han Chinese community itself becomes less prosperous due to its population decline, CCP will lose its support too. When you face a labor shortage, you open up to immigration, and this is what many countries and regions have done throughout human history. But for the CCP, mass immigration would be an endgame. Once you open up to immigration, you don't just bring in people, but you also bring in their lifestyle, their food and their culture. In the US, for example, you can find many Indian restaurants today due to the heavy immigration of Indians in the country. And more importantly, immigration also brings in foreign ideas. So if China looks at immigration from, say, Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia or Mongolia, we are talking about people bringing in ideas like democracy, liberties and freedom. The Chinese society will have to liberalize to enable immigration for addressing local labor shortages. And once the Chinese society liberalizes, it will be an end game for the CCP. The CCP has thrived on big foreign companies, lack of liberties, cheap labor and gross human rights violations. But with a rapidly shrinking and aging population, the CCP is set to lose all these advantages. The shrinking Chinese population is the beginning of the end for the CCP, and this is why Jinping wants couples in the country to think of China and have more children. A plan very unlikely to succeed. If you like this video, like, share and subscribe to TFI English. Also hit the bell icon to receive all the latest updates. This is Isha signing off until the next one.